Okay, so this week we're seeing the biennial conference of the Commonwealth Heads of Government. This time round it's in Samoa. First time that this meeting has ever been held on an island nation, a member of the Commonwealth of Nations, formerly known as the British Commonwealth. Some say that the Commonwealth is just a legacy, a kind of hangover from empire. We like to think it's a little bit more than that. One of the issues that is on everybody's mind, everybody in the human rights sort of camp, is that of Pakistan and its endless violations of human rights, despite all the promises it makes as a Commonwealth country, which it's ignored. And the big one at the moment that's on everybody's lips is that of these wretched blasphemy laws, in which we're seeing extrajudicial executions, murders, burnings, lynchings of people who are accused of blasphemy, whatever that may be. Is it blasphemous to insult Muhammad in the case of Pakistan, or is it blasphemous to merely practice another religion? Either way, as many as 85 people have died as a result of allegations made against them. It's a completely untenable situation. What we have done, those of us taking part in this conversation here, that's myself, Gary Cartwright, the journalist from EU Today. We have Joseph Janssens from the Jubilee Campaign, himself actually a Christian of Pakistani origin. We have Willy Fautré, who is the founder and director of Human Rights Without Frontiers, probably the best known and most prominent of the human rights organizations in Brussels and indeed beyond, I would say across the EU, and Chris Blackburn, who is a media and communications expert, who's working with us on how we can amplify the message so that people can understand exactly what's going on, and more importantly, what we can do to put pressure on Pakistan to change the situation. What we've done this week is to petition the heads of government through the Commonwealth Secretariat, asking them to suspend Pakistan's membership of the Commonwealth. Pakistan has actually been suspended twice before. It does not have a good record, and that record is not improving. In fact, the situation is getting worse. The Commonwealth Secretariat very efficiently, and I'm very grateful to them, forwarded our message, our open letter, to the relevant offices in Samoa. And they very kindly sent me a note saying that this had been done and that the people in Samoa had received and will be looking at this issue. I'd like to really start this debate by going to Joseph. Joseph, you've just recently returned from Pakistan. I know that you've been there just in recent weeks. Would you like to say a little bit about the situation there on the ground at the moment? Might have a technical problem. I know you're at the airport, Joseph, but you're back.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for this initiative, organizing this meeting. I just recently returned from Pakistan after a very long trip, and I was able to travel around Pakistan, like Punjab, Sindh, and Balochistan, and different provinces, writing a report on human rights violations. And unfortunately, if we talk about human rights violations on a massive scale right now in human rights violation, when we talk about blasphemy laws is a serious trend going on, not only in one province, but across Pakistan. False accusations are happening in Punjab, Sindh, Balochistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Imagine in a recent months and weeks, almost every week, one or the other the accusation happened, and which lead to mob lynching, target on individuals, target on places of worship, religious places, churches, the temple of Ahmadis, mosques. These all atrocities are happening. Unfortunately, from the last, if we talk about since May, 4 people have been lynched. Some of them have been burned alive. Recently, in September, for example, if we talk about the case of Shah Nawaz, Dr. Shah Nawaz, a Muslim person, was falsely accused that he has desecrated Prophet Muhammad or said something against Prophet Muhammad, and He was living in the Umarkot province of Sindh, where he was falsely accused. And people, the extremist, beyond the extremist Muslim, police who are actually supposed to protect him, who are supposed to give him protection, in the police custody, they did counter. They say this is a counter terrorism or something, counter defense, and then they lynched. They shot him, gunned down him, and then they were falsely spreading news that it was a counter. He was trying to flee, or he was trying to escape, but this was people who actually gunned down him in the police custody, were praised by the Islamic extremists, by other police officers. So when these trends happened, meaning the human rights violation is now going beyond the limits, the cover of the government. The same way, after the lynching, the family of Umar Shah Nawaz tried to bury his body, and extremist people arrived there at their burial in the cemetery, and they grabbed the body from the family and burned his body alive. This is serious humiliation and serious violation of human rights and dignity of human. Same thing happened in Swat. The person was grabbed from the police custody and his body was burned alive. He was lynched in Swat. In the same way, if we talk about Sargoda, Christian man, Nazir Masih, he was running a shoe factory. The neighbor was jealous because of his business, because of his work, and they accused him falsely for blasphemy, that he has desecrated the page of Quran, and they burned his factory. They attempt to lynch him. After a few days, he died. So in, I think, 4 or 5 months, 4 people have lost their lives. If we talk about last year, almost 26 churches were burned down on different locations. So this is a massive, a mere accusations can lead to somebody to lynching, and the consequences is not only for one person, but entire society, entire community, entire village, town. So the situation on the ground is very worse. It is going bad to worse, not only by the TLP extremist Muslim, but also by the state parties, because none of them have been prosecuted. The government has the responsibility to prosecute those who take the law into their own hands and lynch and persecute and burn these people alive. But unfortunately, there is a failure of the side of the government that they are not prosecuting these individuals. That's why the trend of lynching, mob violence, the burning of the churches is increasing day by day. People use these laws not only to persecute religious minorities, but also to settle their personal, scores, personal revenge on a simple argument. Anybody can accuse anywhere. So blasphemy laws are hanging a sword on the neck of religious minorities, which anybody can use to cut their neck. And it is in the hands of the mob, and also state institutes are misusing. They are biased, they are being discriminatory at the police station and the courts. In a recent judgment, in the case of Shagufta Kiran, a Christian woman, a mother of 4 children, she was behind the bar for last 3 years. Her bail was rejected by the Session Court, High Court, and Supreme Court. And now recently, FIA Court judge has sentenced this woman to death. And if we read the judgment, you see what judgment is saying. The sentence of the judgment saying Shagufta Kiran should be sentenced to death by hanging by her until her death is confirmed. And also her sentence to imprisonment is extreme, and that is what is mentioned in the court, in the judgment written by the court, by the judge. So this kind of extremist punishment, this kind of extremist judgment are showing the direction of the government, telling us the direction of the judiciary, law enforcement, and the lack of and failure of the government to prevent and protect its citizens who are actually the guarantee, whose right is guaranteed in the Constitution of Pakistan. These things are happening, and we must take international stand. International community has the responsibility and core value to protect human rights. Uh, uh, the people who are the member of the common nations. And I think this is, if we now ignore, if international community will ignore, there are thousands and millions of people's life at risk, and people are dying on the grounds, and we have to protect them. We have to give them the right to live, right to life, and right to assembly, to practice their religion. And that's what we should, I think, continue talk and raise with international platforms.
Joseph, thank you. Willy, I'd like to bring you in on this. The right to practice one's own religion should be a basic human right, surely, freedom of belief, freedom of expression. But what Joseph is describing here is a human rights campaign, seemingly institutionalized, possibly even organized at government level. Should such a nation be allowed in the Commonwealth of Nations?
No, it should not, certainly not. And whatever the affiliation of any country to any supranational body such as the Commonwealth. But it's a reality, unfortunately, in Pakistan, despite the repeated pressures coming from NGOs around the world, from Commonwealth countries, but also from the European Union and the European member states, NGOs. And in Brussels, for example, we have built up a coalition of human rights organizations to put the European Commission under pressure to review the type of relations that the EU has with Pakistan. Indeed, it must be stressed that Pakistan has a lot of commercial privileges on the basis of what we call the GSP Plus, which is in fact the acronym of the generalized system of preferences, and it's a EU scheme that grants privileged access to the EU market to products from certain less developed countries. When the eligible country gets GSP Plus status, its products across approximately 60% of all EU tariff lines enter the EU market with zero duties. But to become a beneficiary of the GSP Plus status, the beneficiary country, must demonstrate a tangible progress and political will on the implementation of 27 international treaties regarding labor rights, good governance, climate and environment, and of course, human rights, including freedom of religion or belief. And it was said before, there are egregious violations of freedom of religion or belief. You have quite a number of Christians, of Ahmadis, Hindus who have been on the death row, because they were accused and quite often wrongly accused of so-called blasphemy laws. Now, about the impact of the privileges that Pakistan gets from the European Union, it must be stressed that the European market covers about 440 million consumers. So it is Pakistan's most important destination. And Pakistan exports worth than 5.4 billion euros, namely garments, bed linen, leather, sports, surgical goods, and so on. And it exports to the EU concerns the textile cloth and clothing, as I said, accounting for about 75% of Pakistan's total exports to the EU in 2020. So it means that the EU has in its hands the necessary leverage and weapon to get a compensation, a moral compensation, I would say, in terms of human rights. But it fails to use it. And this is what angers all the NGOs in Brussels, that the European Commission remains deaf to the calls that the privileges granted to Pakistan should be revised, suspended, and maybe more. And despite the conferences that we organized in Brussels, the petitions that we sent to the authorities of the EU, unfortunately, the answer was a death here.
Civil society in Belgium has been very active in bringing this particular situation to the forefront. And there are, as well as human rights campaigners, many politicians and also people from communities that are affected by Pakistan's actions. Here in Belgium, we have a very, very diverse population, and the level of freedom of speech here is very, very high. As long as one stays within the rules, you can be very strong and very vocal. And so we see a lot of campaigning going on here against Pakistan's abuses, not just Pakistan, I have to say, but the refusal of the Commission to acknowledge repeated calls by the European Parliament, elected members actually, unlike the Commission, they're civil servants, brings into question even the integrity of the democracy in the EU. That may sound extreme, but it's something that should be explored when civil servants can override the wishes of an elected parliament. I'd like to go to Chris, because you've had experience with other human rights issues, particularly with the Baloch people in Pakistan. And so as a media and communications expert, I'd like to ask you, what can we do? What can we do to amplify this campaign, this call for suspension of Pakistan from the Commonwealth, and for those campaigning in the EU to amplify the message to the politicians not just in Brussels but across the 27 member states?
Yeah, well, I think, Gary, you're right. There's been a lot of pressure on Pakistan over the years. We've seen sort of egregious human rights abuses. We've seen problems to do with security in Pakistan. We've seen nuclear proliferation. So these issues aren't new, but I think what is new is the alarm, the level of abuses that are happening. This new government was meant to be a coalition of sort of moderates in Pakistan. We had members of the Pakistan People's Party, and we had obviously people from the Muslim League, and it was meant to be a moderate, forward-looking political union that was going to keep the military in the barracks and to keep extremism at bay. And what we've seen is a complete opposite. It's chaos. And I think recently we saw in Geneva, the United Nations and the Human Rights Committee and others were basically saying that Pakistan is now in serious measures. And I think people who've campaigned to try to alleviate these problems, like as Joseph said, we've known about these issues to deal with minorities in the religious persecution in Pakistan. The blasphemy laws are like used to justify mob justice. We've seen also parts of the state who've tried to use the blasphemy laws to crack down on dissent. So this is getting out of control, and its alarm bells are ringing. So I think what we need to do is to take the human rights defenders in Pakistan and to give them wind behind their sails, because when we've seen in the past, sometimes issues can be resolved by international pressure within Pakistan. So let's not give up hope, because ultimately, if we all working together, put pressure, sometimes those politicians, and it does get through. We saw with acid attacks when the British government, when the EU, when the United States really put pressure on Pakistan, we can see change. But when you're there in Pakistan, whether you're a Baloch or you're in Sindhi or wherever, or you're an Afghan refugee in Pakistan, you feel that you're under pressure, and many Pakistanis are living in constant fear now because they see things as sliding out of control. So it's up to us now, as sort of a sign of international solidarity, we need to help them and boost them, put wind behind their sails. When we see people like Marang Baloch being persecuted because Time magazine, a prestigious, massive award for a Pakistani to receive, to say that she wants to make real changes in Pakistan, and yet Pakistan stopped her from getting out of the country. We need to amplify voices like her to protect her and to make sure that international politicians, whether that be at the European Parliament, the European Commission, or at the United Nations, or in other places like the Houses of Parliament in the UK, or the Houses of Congress in the United States, we need to make sure that politicians have roadmaps to say that, listen, we can apply pressure on Pakistan and we can make a difference. I know it looks horrible in that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but if we can put pressure and work like we did on the acid attacks in Pakistan, we can make real change in Pakistan. And that is my hope, because ultimately, if Pakistan fails, then the rest of the region and the rest of the world are going to reap what's being sown there. And it's not a pretty sight.
Chris, I'm aware that yesterday you were in London, because we want to take this campaign really to the House of Commons is our next stop, actually. And I'm aware that you had a meeting in London yesterday on this issue. How did that go?
Yeah, the thing is, in the United Kingdom, we have a relationship with the Commonwealth, with Pakistan. Obviously, we have the colonial history. So there's a lot of politicians in the United Kingdom who know Pakistan inside out. And they've been getting frustrated over the years about the lack of progress that Pakistan has made. And in fact, as we are seeing, the alarm bells are going off, things are sliding backwards. So there's a lot of politicians who want to protect minorities and want to protect freedom of religion, who are saying, listen, Christians are the problem, and the Hindus are the most persecuted, along with the Ahmadis, are the most persecuted in Pakistan. We want to do everything we can to help them. And I think re-examining Pakistan's position and its role within the Commonwealth is ultimately harmful to the Commonwealth and harmful to the charter of what it's supposed to be, which is about respecting the individual and giving them human dignity. Pakistan does none of those things. So really, should it be, because of its colonial history, be part of the Commonwealth? No, I don't think it should, unless it fulfills its agreement to abide by the principles of the Commonwealth Charter.
Yes, I agree. I think we all had imagined that the days when people attacked each other simply because they went to a different church were over a very, very long time ago. Clearly, that's not the case. The idea of throwing acid into people's faces, Chris, and you're absolutely correct. There was a big campaign, certainly in the EU institutions, a lot of lobbying going on that, and I am aware there have been improvements. I've got to ask questions. What sort of man would throw acid into the face of his daughter because she'd done something to displease him? So we're not dealing with rational human beings here on the ground, are we? Let's be honest.
Yeah, well,
what is it that we're doing wrong? And also the guise of religion. So much is done under the guise of religion. Let us not forget the Ku Klux Klan presented itself as a Christian organization. You see how religion can be an excuse. And I think that maybe the West is being a little softer on Pakistan because we're presenting this as maybe a religious issue. And I don't think that it should be presented as a religious matter. This should be straightforward, a human rights issue.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you just have to look to the history of Pakistan and the political forces that are pulling the country apart, in my opinion. And we had Jinnah, who was obviously the founder of Pakistan, and he wanted the state to learn from mistakes of the past. He wanted it to be a relatively secular country, but for Muslims of the Indian subcontinent. So that was his vision. And then obviously what we saw is an erosion, and obviously when General Zia-ul-Haq took control of Pakistan, he wanted to use radical Islam to unify the country. And what we've seen is, since this period when Zia-ul-Haq was in power, there's been an abuse of human rights, everything was to do with Zia and pulling the radicals from the Jamaat-e-Islami party and others into various institutions in Pakistan. So we have to understand that Pakistan is moving and shifting between Jinnah and Zia. And I think it's ultimately it will be up to Pakistanis and how they see a future ahead. But we also need to play a role as sort of international partners and people who want to see Pakistan do well. We don't want to attack Pakistan, but we have to, because the alarm bells are ringing. Everybody's saying it, whether NGOs in Pakistan, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the United Nations itself. The fact is, there's been very little in toolkits, whether it by the United States, the EU or the UK, to really apply pressure that works on Pakistan. We've seen signs where it can work in the past, especially on the acid attacks. But going forward, we all need to work together to make sure that Pakistan is held accountable, and those voices who are calling for reforms are giving space, and without applying pressure or threatening suspensions of Pakistan from the Commonwealth, we're simply not going to be able to achieve any of that.
You're absolutely correct, Chris. Threats aren't working. Action is what's needed. Willy, do you have any more comments to add?
Yes, some more comments. I would say that not only civil society in Brussels was actively campaigning against the privileges granted by the EU to Pakistan in exchange of nothing, but also the European Parliament. They repeatedly adopted documents and resolutions asking the European Commission to review Pakistan's eligibility for the GSP Plus status in the light of a human rights violation. But I would say that in Pakistan, it's not only a freedom of religion issue, it's not only a free human rights issue, but it is also a matter of segregation issue. Because in the case of Ahmadis, for example, they cannot identify as Muslims. They cannot have a mosque because if there are minarets, they are destroyed. If they want to vote, they cannot, because they are considered as heretics. So all those issues show that there is a total marginalization of a number of minorities, religious and ethnic minorities. And additionally, I would say that last year, 6 UN special rapporteurs expressed alarm about the reported rise in abductions, forced marriages and conversions of underage girls and young women from religious minorities. And a month ago, when we were at the OSCE annual conference on the human rights, we denounced the fact that people fleeing Pakistan, and in particular the Ahmadis, because of their religious beliefs, and asking for political asylum in some countries, like Germany, were rejected. The applications were rejected as if they didn't know anything in Germany about the fact that the Ahmadis were heavily persecuted. There was a parliamentary question that was asked by Peter Pau from Die Linke in Germany, asking for statistics. And in 60% of the cases, Germany rejected the applications of asylum of Ahmadis from Pakistan and sent them back to their country. It's also, I would say, a criminal activity by some European governments to send back asylum seekers coming from Ahmadis. And the European Union could do much more. When Jan Fiegel was the EU Special Envoy on freedom of religion or belief, he developed a lot of pressure on the Pakistani authorities to get the release of Christians who were on the death row because of so-called violation of the laws on blasphemy. And he managed to get Asia Bibi out of jail and out of Pakistan. Now we have another EU special envoy who went to Pakistan recently, I would say almost silently, and he knocked on the doors of a number of ministries, and despite promises to meet him, almost all official appointments were cancelled. It means the huge disregard that the political authorities in Pakistan have towards the European Union. And what is the reaction of the European Union? Nothing. Nothing.
Willy, your camera's slipping a little bit and we're losing you. Can you just adjust very slightly there so that we can, you're going to need to adjust a little bit more because we're losing the bottom part of your
yes,
face.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to finish. Joseph, you're still with it. Joseph, can you check your microphone?
Yes.
Great. Joseph,
can you hear me? Yes.
Can I let you have the last word on this?
Yes, I just want to say that people are dying in Pakistan, and we have the responsibility to end the death of innocent people. Innocent people's lives are at risk because of the blasphemy laws. As Willy mentioned, the other atrocity is on daily basis is getting committed is the child marriage, forced conversion of minority girls. Our hundreds girls have been annually abducted and forcefully converted to Islam and married off with their abductor who is already married, has children. And the police and courts play the role of as a facilitator in the favor of the abductor. When the parents, they go to the police station, they do not register the FIR. When the parents come to the court, they deny their own provisions, own laws, and apply Sharia law on religious minorities. The girls who are at the age of 11, 12, 13, 14 are getting married with already married person who is abductor, raping, gang raped. Multiple cases we have seen that the girls have been gang raped, sexually exploited, sexually trafficked to one province to another province. And these atrocities our religious minorities are facing on daily basis. Christians, Hindu girls have been abducted. There has been reports that thousands of girls have been abducted for annually from Hindu communities. One of their religious leader was sanctioned by the UK government. So these atrocities, child labor in Pakistan on a massive scale at the brick hill, child slavery on a massive scale. People have been forcefully converted to Islam without their will. So Pakistan, not only the extremists are forcefully converted to Islam, but also Pakistan violating its own constitution by making the separate policies in the Nadra office, which issue the birth certificate. So they put restrictions on religious freedom. So meaning in Pakistan, there is a one-side religious freedom. Any person from religious minority can convert to Islam, but any Muslim cannot convert to Islam. So they put restriction on religious freedom. So these atrocities are getting committed on daily basis. As Willy said already, many people are on death row, including Junaid Hafiz. More than decades, this scholar, professor was sentenced to death on blasphemy accusation. Anwar Kanath is behind the bar for over 2 decades, 23 years, Willy. His case is lingering in the Supreme Court of Pakistan. He was sentenced to death by Session Court, High Court. His appeal is at the Supreme Court of Pakistan. 23 years, whole life, he has become old. So imagine this is too far. This is very far. Anwar Kanath is not the only one. Shagufta Kiran, Zafar Bhatti, a Christian pastor for over decades, 12 years, sentenced to death. People are suffering in the confinement, in isolation cells. And that's why we have the responsibility to be their voice, to raise their voice, and do everything in our authorities' possible action for their release and bring change in Pakistan. That's what I wanted to add.
Joseph, thank you very much. Also, Willy, Chris, thank you very much for giving up your time. These are very, very important issues that have been raised here. Joseph, I don't know whether you're aware of this, but there are something like 100 Sharia courts openly operating in Great Britain today. This is actually against the law to set up your own court. Authorities are turning a blind eye to this. And I think your warning there should be heeded. Finally, I'd just like to thank the Commonwealth Secretariat in London for so promptly passing on our letter. Within an hour of their receiving it, that was passed on to the relevant office in Samoa. So thanks very much to them. Guys, thank you very much. Joseph, have a great flight. And we will all meet up soon.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.